By late winter, Toronto had learned Adie's Uma's habits. The city knew the creak of the third stair in her walk up above the Jamaican bakery, the rhythm of her boots on Queen Street after late shifts at the community mental health clinic, the fog she breathed into the night as Lake Ontario pushed cold air inland. She carried Lagos inside her, her mother's voice on WhatsApp, her father's careful jokes, the habit of noticing people and making room for them. At 28, with a desk plant that kept dying and reviving as stubbornly as she did, she was building a new life, one careful routine at a time. Sleep came hard. On those long nights she found a channel called Midnight Letters, faceless stories read over city soundscapes, rain on windows, transit bells, the soft hum of a fridge at 3 a.m. The narrator's voice was warm without being sentimental, precise without being cold. He never showed his face. He called himself North Star and signed off each episode with the same line: "Maps are promises in pencil. We draw, then we dare." The community below each upload was surprisingly kind. People wrote about long distance, about grief, about the quiet work of trying again. One username kept appearing beneath Adie's comments: Echo Atlas. His replies were thoughtful, never pushy. "You write like you know how to listen," he said once. She smiled at her screen, absurdly moved by a stranger's attention to a thing most people overlooked. They moved from comments to DMs. A slow honesty grew between them, like a room furnished piece by piece. He told her he was 32, Black American, raised in Detroit, trained in audio engineering, in Toronto for a contract that kept extending because, as he put it, "The city keeps asking me new questions." He didn't say much about his past except that he was editing his life and trying to be precise with what he keeps. "Is North Star your friend?" she asked one night, half teasing. "You sound like someone who knows how to make quiet loud." A long pause. "I help a few channels with sound," he wrote. "I like what Midnight Letters is trying to do. The world is noisy. I want to design rest." She sent him a voice note then, her bright, husky Lagos meets Toronto lilt, reading a poem she loved about doors that open inward. He replied with a clip of ambient streetcar bells stitched into rain. It felt like they were exchanging pieces of their weather. They tried not to name what was forming. They stayed careful. He never sent a photo. She didn't push. But Daniel? No, not Daniel. That was a name from another life. Marcus. That was the name that arrived one evening like a gift wrapped in plain paper. "You can call me Marcus," he wrote. "No last name online. Boundaries are bridges too." She typed back her own, Adie's. "Friends call me Ada." They discovered they shopped at the same Kensington Market grocer and liked the same quiet corner table at a cafe on Spadina with a soft-spoken barista who spelled names right without asking. The city kept placing them near each other like a hopeful matchmaker, and somehow they kept missing. Ada told herself it was better this way. She liked the courage distance gave her. She liked that her heart could walk toward something without tripping over old fear. At 2 a.m., Midnight Letters uploaded a new story about believing what you cannot yet touch. The narrator's voice brushed her ear. "Maps are promises in pencil." Ada copied the line into her notebook and, before she could talk herself out of it, asked a question she had avoided for weeks. "What would it take," she typed to Marcus, "for a promise to survive the eraser?" The three dots blinked. Then, showing up. Not once. Again and again. She didn't sleep for a while after that, because something in her felt seen and startled and gently awake. Toronto thawed without ceremony. Patches of gray snow shrank into the seams between curb and road. Street musicians returned to the corners with guitars that sounded like they remembered summer. Ada traded her heavy coat for a denim jacket and a bright scarf her sister had mailed from Lagos. The clinic where she worked was always busiest during season changes, when moods were unmoored. She liked the steadying work of it, intake forms, referrals, the small triumph of finding someone, a support group that fit. Marcus's messages became a liturgy of the day. He'd send her the audio equivalent of a sunrise, a short field recording from his morning run, gulls arguing over the lake, the faraway rush of the Gardiner Expressway, a laugh carried from a pier. She'd reply with the tiny details she kept in her pocket. The woman on the 501 streetcar who knitted without looking, the way the city buses kneeled for a man who moved slowly, the baker downstairs who set aside coconut bread for her when she worked late. "People make cities gentle," Marcus wrote. "Even when they're not trying." They began trading stories in longer pieces. Childhood vignettes, failed relationships, the cost of being brave in families that expected compliance. Ada told him about a fiancé back home who loved public declarations and private silences, who mistook her softness for surrender. She left before the wedding and brought the ache with her across the ocean. Marcus told her about a New York move that fell apart, a partnership that placed his voice on billboards and kept his name off contracts, a relationship that made promises she had no intention of keeping. Being faceless felt like a way to start again, he admitted. Everyone wants the brand. I wanted a room. Ada listened the way she lived, all the way through. Rooms become homes when someone names what hurts, she wrote. And stays while you learn how to say it back. They finally chose a day to meet, Saturday, Trinity Bellwoods Park, noon, near the Dog Bowl. It felt almost reckless, puncturing the careful membrane of their distance. Ada wore the scarf because she'd told him about it and stopped twice on the walk to breathe. At the park, dogs sprinted like small, happy meteors. A busker strummed Ordinary People, and somebody harmonized. Ada waited. At 12:15 a text, I'm so sorry. Studio emergency. Can we move to 4 p.m. Harborfront instead? Outside the power plant gallery? She stared at the message, disappointment and relief wrestling like siblings. Okay, she typed. 4 p.m. Between noon and 4 she tried to work, failed, then wandered a bookstore where the air smelled of paper and wood and dust. She found a postcard rack. One card carried a line typed in a clean font. Maps or promises in pencil. She bought it without thinking and tucked it into her pocket like superstition. The lake was pewter at 4, brushed with wind. A man in a navy cap recorded the slap of water against the pier with a small microphone. Another leaned against a railing and ate an apple like it was a slow, important task. Ada checked her phone. 4:07, 4:12. I'm at the red sculpture, she texted. Blue scarf. A long minute. Then, Ada, this job won't let me go. I'm sorry. Give me one more day. She closed her eyes. The old feeling, someone choosing work or fear or ease over her, tried to stand up in her chest. She sat with it, breathed around it and let it sit in the corner instead of the center. One more day, she typed. But after that, I need something solid. Tomorrow, he wrote. I promise. That night Midnight Letters posted a story about the courage it takes to keep showing up. The voice was steady, but Ada heard a thread of strain woven through, like a musician playing a beautiful piece with a splinter in his finger. She set her phone on her pillow and whispered to the dark, please let tomorrow be the day. Tomorrow came dressed as Sunday, and Toronto tried its best to be gracious. Light broke through a ceiling of cloud, the wind behaved. Ada chose a quiet cafe near Spadina, the one with the eucalyptus in the window and the barista who remembered teaspoons of sugar like people's birthdays. She picked the corner table and placed the postcard between the salt and the small vase. Maps or promises in pencil. The bell chimed at 11. A man in a navy cap stepped in, tall, an easy economy in his movements. He ordered tea in a voice that tugged at the edge of Ada's memory, a low, unhurried tone that made sentences sound like they had arrived somewhere sure. He turned. Their eyes snagged for half a second like fabric on a nail. He glanced away, scanning for a seat. Ada watched his hands as he stirred his tea, long fingers, a small scar on his knuckle that matched the catch in his voice. She forced herself to look down at her phone. I'm outside, a message arrived. Blue jacket, gray hoodie. She looked up. The man with the navy cap wore a denim jacket, beneath, a gray hoodie. He was inside, not out. He set his tea on the table beside hers, slipped out a small field recorder, and placed it gently like an old friend. Marcus? She asked before she could stop herself. He looked at her. Surprise opened his face, then something like recognition, then caution, like someone stepping from stage light into a dark aisle. I'm sorry, he said. The smile was polite, not personal. Ada's cheeks warmed. My mistake, she muttered and returned to her screen. Another message blinked in. So sorry. Running 5 minutes late. Save me the corner if you can. She exhaled a laugh so small it barely counted. The man in the cap closed his eyes briefly as if he'd caught the sound and stored it somewhere. At 11:06, the door chimed again. A second man, also tall, also black, also early 30s by the look of him, hustled in with the awkwardness of someone honestly late. He had kind eyes and an anxious grin, and the way he held his shoulders said he was trying not to knock over anyone's morning. Ada? He asked. She stood. Marcus. Marcus Carter, he said, offering a hand and then putting it down like he'd remembered touch was a negotiation. I'm really sorry I blew yesterday. The studio? He trailed off, winced, tried again. I didn't manage it well. His apology was clean, not wrapped in excuses. Ada liked that. They sat. They traded small histories. He worked in post-production sound, consulted for podcasts and a few story channels, and was, at the moment, chasing 3 deadlines and a voice that always sounded a little different in his own ears than it did in the world. "Do you ever do narration?" she asked. "Only when I have to," Marcus said. "I like building the room more than being in it." They laughed easily. The conversation did what good conversations do. It moved without needing to be pushed. He asked about her work at the clinic and listened without flinching when she described the slow emergencies that were other people's lives. She noticed how he watched the room as if sound had shapes he could trace. When she told him she sometimes fell asleep to midnight letters, his mouth tilted at the corner, fond as if she'd mentioned a cousin. "It's good work," he said. "A quiet place to put your hands." When they stood to leave, she felt a steadiness that made no promises and still felt like one. Outside, the man in the navy cap passed them with his recorder, catching the cafe's bell in the coil of its sound. He glanced at Marcus, a nod that could have been greeting or reflex. Marcus nodded back. They looked, to anyone watching, like men who knew the same language from different schools. Ada tucked the postcard deeper into her pocket and decided for now to let the day be simple. She had met Marcus. He was kind. She liked him. The rest could take its time. That night, a new Midnight Letters episode dropped. The voice was warmer, a fraction less guarded. One sentence struck deep enough to sit up in her. "There are names we say and names we hold. Sometimes they are the same name." Ada turned the volume down, replayed the sentence, and felt a small, unreasonable shiver run along her skin. They began meeting in the world that week: coffee walks, a museum hour after work, an evening sitting on a bench facing the lake and narrating the people who passed as if they were opening lines waiting for stories. Marcus never pressed for more than she offered. He was good at attention. He laughed with his whole face. When he spoke about sound, he got that bright, focused look of someone who loves something enough to suffer for it. One Thursday he invited her to a small storytelling night in Parkdale. Nothing fancy, just local writers and producers in a back room above a bar, trading pieces in progress. "I'd like you to hear some rough cuts," he said. "Tell me where the breath belongs." The room smelled like beer and dust and ambition. Someone had strung warm bulbs along the ceiling. The light looked like kind intentions. A handful of people swapped headphones and notes. On one wall, a poster listed the night's order. Ada traced the printed lines with a finger: rundown, transit love, map room, blue hour, letters after midnight. "Is that," she began. "An homage," Marcus said, mouth crooked. "Half the city is in conversation with that channel." The host called the room to attention. "Okay, friends. Last up before the open floor, a piece from our very own ghost of the booth." Laughter. "He swears he hates reading, but we keep tricking him." "Give it up, Marcus." Ada turned so fast her chair squeaked. "You read?" she whispered. "I read sometimes," he said, almost sheepish. He took the small stage, slipped behind the mic like a man stepping into a familiar coat, and when he spoke the room changed temperature. It wasn't that he sounded exactly like the faceless narrator she listened to at 2 a.m. It was that he lived in the same neighborhood of voice, carried his consonants with care, warmed his vowels on the way out, placed silence where lesser readers would have filled with noise. Then 2 minutes in, he hit a line that landed in her body like a bell. "Maps are promises in pencil. We draw then we dare." Ada went still. The room rustled around her, unaware. She watched his mouth shape the sentence and heard the exact phrasing she had scribbled on a postcard weeks ago. A coincidence, she told herself. Lovers of the same channel borrow its scaffolding. But then he read a new passage, one she had never heard, and closed it with the channel's sign-off cadence, that tender, precise farewell that had seen her through too many lonely nights. After, while people clapped his back and asked small technical questions, Ada stood to the side and tried to convince her heartbeat to be reasonable. He saw her and smiled the way people smile when they find the thing they were hoping hadn't left. "Walk?" he asked. They turned onto Queen Street, the bar's noise dissolving behind them. Streetcars shushed past like reliable ghosts. Ada let the question sit as long as she could bear and then laid it down between them. "Marcus," she said softly, "are you North Star?" His step faltered. All the careful placement in his face slipped and then rearranged. He looked not caught so much as called. "I am," he said finally. "I should have told you. I didn't because," he exhaled, "because the last time someone said they loved my work they meant the part of me they could use. I wanted to know if you'd like me without the room I built." Ada kept walking because stopping felt too dramatic for the sidewalk. The truth behind the truth rose, sharp and old. "You let me fall asleep to a voice that belonged to you," she said. "You let me tell you how it steadied me. You let me meet you here and not know something that—" She stopped. "I feel foolish." He reached then, stopped himself, placed his hand in his own pocket like a pen on a line he wouldn't cross without permission. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not sorry for making the work. Sorry for hiding behind it when I started to care. I told myself I was protecting the channel. I was protecting me. But that means I wasn't protecting you." The city breathed around them, fry oil and rain and laughter from a patio. Ada wanted to forgive him immediately because she wanted not to lose what had been growing. She also wanted to throw the postcard at him and walk away. Instead, she did the hardest, most adult thing. She told the truth and left room for both of them to be human. "I need space," she said. "And I need you to tell me the story of why you hide. Not tonight. But if I choose to come back, I need the whole thing." "I'll wait," he said. No promise. No demand. Just a sentence that could hold its own weight. Days folded into each other. Ada let the space be honest. She answered his texts with measured kindness. He responded with patience that felt like respect, not strategy. He sent no links to the channel, offered no behind-the-curtain access, didn't try to seduce her with proximity to something thousands of people loved. He asked about her caseload and the community garden behind the clinic where spring onions had finally emerged like shy children. He told her when a deadline went well and when it didn't. On a Tuesday, her mother called from Abuja with an insistence in her voice Ada heard even before the words. Her father's blood pressure had spiked. The clinic wanted him monitored more closely. They were not panicking, they were not. "We are fine," her mother said, which meant they were trying to be. After the call, Ada sat at her desk and stared at a poster on the wall about breathing exercises. The room tilted a few degrees. Her supervisor found her there and gave her 30 minutes to step outside. She crossed to the little park behind the building and wrapped her scarf around her shoulders even though the air didn't call for it. The city around her had its own emergencies, and none of them stopped because hers had arrived. She texted Marcus, not for a solution but because his name had become a place to set heavy things down for a moment. "My dad's not well. I'm here and they're there and I hate the distance. I'm sorry." No need to reply. I just needed to say it out loud somewhere kind. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed once. "I'm here. I won't ask what you need. Tell me if there's a specific. If there isn't, I'll be on a bench 2 blocks from you in 15 with soup. No talking required unless you want it. If that's too much, I'll leave it with the receptionist." Ada stared at the message and felt a stitch loosen under her ribs. "Bench is okay," she wrote. "Thank you." He showed up in 12 minutes with 2 soups and bread the size of a fist. He didn't try to fix anything. He put the paper bag down like a small ceremony, sat a respectful distance away, and let silence be acceptable company. When she finally spoke, it wasn't about fear but about logistics. Money transfers, finding a better machine for home use, whether a nurse could come twice a week. "I can help research," he said. "If you want. Not as a savior. As a man with Wi-Fi and a willingness to call people politely until they are helpful." She laughed despite the weight in her chest. "Yes, please." Over the next 3 days Marcus turned into a diligent administrative assistant with a tender core. He called clinics, found a reputable supplier, organized information into a document that even her panic could parse. He didn't hover. He checked in at the edges. When she apologized for being distracted and distant, he wrote, "I'm not a project. I'm a person with time. Take what you need." The channel released 2 episodes that week. Ada didn't listen. She wrote her family, fought with a bank over a transfer, took her turn leading the clinic's grief group, and learned again how heavy an ocean is. On Saturday, she knocked on Marcus's door for the first time. He lived above a bike shop. A plant that had never known despair sat proudly in the window. He opened before the second knock. They stood there like people trying to decide whether to be careful or brave. Ada chose both. "Come with me tomorrow," she said. "Church is a weird word for what it is, but it's a room with singing and old women who will press plantain into your hand afterward and ask about your future. They will like your face. After, I'll listen to your story about why you hide." He smiled, small and grateful. "Yes." After the service the next day, after plantain and questions and a hug from an usher who thought she remembered him, they sat on a low wall in the sun. Marcus told her about the partnership that had taken his work and called it theirs, the public fight that followed, the video a former lover posted with just enough truth to make the lies sticky, the way showing his face had once made him feel like a storefront where anybody could throw stones and walk away anonymous. "I built a faceless room to keep telling stories without inviting that damage," he said. "Then you walked in and I realized the room isn't everything. It can't be if it keeps me from being honest with the person I want to build a life with." Ada listened until the story made a shape she could hold. "Thank you," she said. "I can work with this. I can't work with not knowing." They didn't kiss. They didn't declare. They did the thing that rescues more love than grand gestures do. They told the truth and agreed on what it would take to keep showing up. Summer put color back on the city's cheeks. Street festivals returned. Someone played saxophone in the underpass and made the echoes sound like a choir. Midnight Letters began crediting MC as producer on each episode. No photo, just initials. In one narration, Northstar paused longer than usual after the opening line, as if to leave space for another voice. One evening, Marcus invited Ada to the Harborfront Community Studio, where an audience gathered for a live sound walk. People wore headphones and followed a narrated route along the water while small recorded stories unfolded like stones you could step on to cross a stream. "I'm guest narrating one segment," he said. "There's a second mic, if you want it." They walked side by side at the front of the group, cords trailing, the lake easy against the pier. The first 3 stops were other voices. At the 4th, Marcus's voice entered, rich and recognizable. "We are standing where maps lie to us," he said. "They make straight lines of what is crooked and kind." He glanced at Ada. She took a breath and spoke into her mic, her voice amplified into 100 pairs of ears. "My mother says names are houses," she said. "You live in them even when you move." The group kept walking, guided not by arrows but by cadence. At the final stop, a small crowd had gathered. Listeners who had finished early, people who'd paused their own evenings to see what the headphones were for. A pop-up stage, almost accidental, formed around the red sculpture where Ada had once waited alone. Marcus unclipped his mic and looked at her the way people look when choosing feels like faith. "I have something to say," he told the small crowd, voice unamplified now and somehow larger. "I make a thing called Midnight Letters. I kept my face out of it because a face felt like a door to the wrong kind of noise. I'm still careful about doors. But I don't want the room to keep me from the people I love." A few heads turned, recognition dawning in the flush of fans who had needed that channel at 2 a.m. The moment could have tipped toward spectacle. It didn't. It stayed human-sized because he kept it so. He took Ada's hand, not for show but because it steadied him, and continued. "Someone I'm learning to be brave with asked me to tell the whole story," he said. "So here is the part one left out. I hid because I was hurt. I'm choosing not to hide because I want to heal. If you listen to the channel, thank you. If you don't, that's okay too. Today I wanted my voice to have a body in the same frame." Ada felt the old fear, public declarations, private silences, stepped forward and then she watched it sit back down. Marcus had matched his words to his life in front of witnesses. That mattered. They didn't kiss then either. They didn't need to. The applause was gentle, a sound like rain you're glad to be under. Later, on a bench facing the broad, ordinary water, they did what had defined them from the first message to this moment. They talked. "What if we make a piece together?" Marcus asked. "Something about maps drawn in pencil and what we choose to ink." "I'll write it," Ada said. "You'll sound design it. We'll read it together." They did. The episode went out the following week with 2 voices carrying one story. Ada read the first line, "Some rooms make us small to keep us safe." Marcus closed with the sign-off he had made famous and newly true. "Maps are promises in pencil. We draw then we dare." And then, because rooms can change, he added, "And when the lines hold, we ink." In time, Ada's father's numbers steadied. The clinic's garden produced more tomatoes than anyone expected. Marcus's initials stayed in the credits. His face stayed mostly off the channel by choice, not fear. In the city that had nearly let them pass each other a dozen times, they learned the quiet choreography of ordinary partnership. Groceries chosen together, calendars negotiated, apologies offered before they were demanded, laughter stored for hard days. People wrote to Midnight Letters about the new episodes with 2 voices and said things like, "I feel less alone," and, "Thank you for making honesty sound like a place I can live." Ada pinned one message above her desk that read, "I used to think anonymity was the point. Now I think the point is choosing how much of yourself to bring and still bringing it." On a late summer night, they walked the pier without microphones. The lake wore the moon lightly. Ada took the postcard from her wallet, the one that had followed her through doubt and distance, and handed Marcus a pen. "Let's do the thing we said," she told him. "Draw then dare." He smiled and wrote in neat block letters beneath the printed line, "And when we're ready we ink." They did not promise forever. They promised tomorrow, then showed up for it. Again and again until the pencil lines proved what they had believed in the dark. Some maps can be trusted. Some rooms grow with you. Some love stories begin faceless and end fearless.